Please rise for silent invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilman Grubbs.
Here.
Councilman Bastian.
Here.
Councilman Stiltner.
Here.
Vice Mayor Foley.
Here.
Mayor Burnett.
Here. All five of us are here. We have a quorum. Before we get to item 4, just a quick reminder. Monday is Memorial Day, and here at City Center, we'll be gathered here to celebrate the sacrifice of 1.2 million Americans over the course of our country's history. And those watching at home and listening, I would invite you to come out to the ceremony. It's about a half hour, 40 minutes long. It usually draws quite a crowd, and it is very solemn, very wonderful. It ends with the 21-gun salute. There will be there'll be a few people speaking. Last I heard, the congressman is anticipated to be there. What we want to be able to do is give rightful homage to those that have sacrificed the most for our freedom. And before we run off to the mattress sale or whatever it is that day, let's take half an hour, 40 minutes in the morning and do it right and do it well. I'd very much love to see all of Port Orange there. The best thing I can do that morning is really freak out Parks and Rec about where we're going to put everybody. So come on out Monday morning, 10 a.m., and then you can enjoy the rest of the day from there. With that, item 4, budget workshop discussion. Wayne, what have you got for us?
So Assistant Manager John McKinney is going to lead the discussion tonight. The outcome we intended to hear, it's early in the budget process, the first thing in front of you going forward. Capital is pretty complex. What we're going to focus on is the capital improvements, capital outlay, and then service enhancements requested by the departments, which include some new personnel requests. You saw the package that you got. There's about 60 different individual capital projects in that package. They submit them to the finance department. They get put into the chart through the 5 years. So some of the items are in year 1 are simply just feasibility analysis. Some are design, some are construction. So John's going to take you through all of that's in there. And then our hope tonight is to get your general impressions on those as we move forward. He's got a slide at the end that talks about what next steps are, and that'll get into the timing of the upcoming workshop. So we have a July, we won't have one at the end of June, and then we expect to get state revenue estimates. So in July, we'll come back to you with the full budget, which will include capital and all the operating, set the millage at the end of the month, having a workshop in August. So he'll go through that at the end with the hope today being that you can get through all the capital and give us some feedback on what you think about the focus will be on next fiscal year's dollars. So with that, I'll turn it over to John, let him go.
That was a good recap. Did you leave anything left for him to do?
He might be here a while.
I'm very good. Between you, Mayor, and Wayne, City Manager, y'all handle it for me. Mayor, Council, John McKinney. First and foremost, thanks to the finance staff that helped me to put all this together this evening, along with the department heads and all the admins. As the City Manager stated, the budget is a fluid process up until the final budget adoption. Even then, budgets can be amended. Tonight we are setting the framework for CIP capital and fleet replacement as we continue through the budget process. So a broad overview of the next few slides will be CIP, your capital improvement plan. What's shown to you this evening is just next year's staff request. What was sent out to y'all last evening was the whole 5-year CIP. As the City Manager stated, this will give you a guideline on prioritization over the next few months as we look at funding as it comes in. The first request here, these deal with transportation. The majority of the funding process for these are a local option gas tax. These projects are needed for roadways, sidewalks, and trails throughout the city. Now, I did not know, Mayor, did you want me to read each one of these in the dollar amount, or just kind of have an overview for everyone to sink in to see what they are.
The overview is good, but as it's a workshop format, any of the five of us could interrupt you at any time if we need something more specific.
Absolutely. So again, if there's any questions that I can't answer, we have the experts behind me to answer. So for our transportation, which is our Fund 301, there's a little under $1.9 million in requested projects for the upcoming year. As I stated, the majority of these projects have some state funding that are part of this. I probably would just point out that your biggest projects for next year would be the Madeline Avenue and Bruner Road Trail sidewalks, which is $500,000, and the Williamson Boulevard and Willow Run Boulevard sidewalks, which is $564,000. And then I think, as all of us are very aware, we have some of our turn lanes that are coming to fruition at Herbert Street, Clyde Morris, Dunlawton, and Yorktown.
And these are all in the design stage, so these are being designed in this budget to be constructed in the future.
Correct.
They're currently in design now.
Okay. Here's the location of those projects throughout the city. So you have, 1 through 11, they're identified on here, and this is prepared by Community Development and the GIS team within IT, so very appreciative of them.
This is something that I would like to be able to see and use on a big placard, so people can see it and use it. We've got the Coffee with the Mayor events coming up. Wayne, if it's possible, maybe we can reproduce that on a placard. Chamber events, maybe even in City Hall, just for people to observe and see, because a lot of people have no idea what we have planned. And I think that when I saw this in the packet, I was thinking that this would be something that I'd love to be able to share a little bit more en masse, if we could do that.
We can, and we'll probably also, just because a lot of people mostly are interested in when are they going to be done, so we'll put the estimated year of completion, because
Okay.
the way they've done these projects, remember, some of these go back to when
Well,
I
and
was
I think that's a
upstairs.
great idea, because when we show them, we need to set expectations too.
Yeah,
Sure.
but the state changed, we used to do them as all individual projects, and they won't let you submit little ones, so they required them all to be bundled to get a larger dollar amount. So several of these projects have been around for a while and been talked about by council for a number of years. And the reason that they're a little slower is that instead of moving up all the latter year ones to build them faster, they took all the newer ones and pushed the earlier ones to them. So they're mostly 24, 25 construction completion timeline. So there's that whole group of turn lanes in there, and then there's also, you'll see sidewalk completion as well. So those are all, we're going to get a lot of ribbon cutting sidewalk completions at the same time in about 2 years.
And I think we have the our representative to the River to Sea TPO to thank for part of that, and appreciate his tenacity on that, Reed.
Absolutely.
Keep up at it.
Okay. So then we move on to our general construction. The general construction projects benefit community development, parks and recreation, and public works. In the out years, there are projects included also, if you look in your 5-year out CIP, for potential park referendum bond projects. One of the things that I want to mention on this slide is that you might see, well, John, I see stormwater, and stormwater is a separate fund. Well, the majority of the project is funded by CDBG and general fund revenues, so therefore this is just additional money as part of the project. So the overwhelming majority of it, this project is funded by the general fund. So therefore, as we went through last year when we were going through the budget process, where we used to have projects in multiple funds, everything's in one fund for simplicity. For accounting purposes.
And he's referring to the City Center Improvements Project, which is a very, very important project. So it's hardening the shoreline, fixing the irrigation, fixing the sidewalks, making the crosswalks more straight and ADA compliant. So there's a lot of important stuff to be done. This is our critical piece of public land. It is the centerpiece of all of our parks and recreation, with the new rec being open. It's a very important project. It's nice that there's a lot of funding from sources besides our own general fund to get this done, but it's a very important project to see moving forward. The other one on there, the Riverwalk Day Docks, that's the fine grants to do the day dock down at the Riverwalk, so people can actually find a place to put a boat and go to fish and other places like that.
And some of the other projects that are on here will be funded by FEMA as a result of Hurricane Ian. So again, as we go through this and we take a look at the funding strategies of how we're going to pay for this, in the July workshop, we will actually be able to show exactly how we can fund each of these wish list projects. But then some of the other projects that are on here are like the amphitheater seating replacement. Those were projects that were discussed last year. We didn't have the funding, so we're bringing it forward to this year in the hopes that we can find the necessary funding to go forward with these projects. Then we have the start of the design of the Public Works remodel for $350,000 for a future year project. Police impound yard update of that there at the public police complex, and additional money towards the resurfacing of all of our city facilities and properties. So altogether, for general construction, we have requests of just under $2.8 million. Okay. Then we go to our water sewer. Over the last 6 months, we've had quite a few presentations by Rafatilis where they've gotten up before us discussing how to pay for out-year projects. These are all of the projects that were part of that study, and for next year we have just a little over 17 million. As Henry Thomas and Sean spoke previously, quite a few of these projects will require a debt issuance. And part of that Rafatilis study, it did incorporate what those annual debt service payments would be. Okay. Then we come up to our stormwater drainage master plan projects. So here we have 6 designated areas throughout the city that need future enhancements of our stormwater drainage conveyance systems. So they're all highlighted there, the 6 key areas, and the projects that you will see on the next sheet are just some of the projects that are slated for next year that are throughout our drainage conveyance system.
Wayne, go back to that last slide for just a second. Wayne, that would be another good one to have, because traffic and flood management, those are our 2 hot issues right now, and I'd like people to be able to see what we're doing with that. So if you could do the same with
we
this
can have
one as
those
well.
ready, and Mike's been doing an outstanding job of putting out on social media too, just the ongoing work too,
I've
so we
seen-
can have them put these out there as well. Every time I pick up the phone, there's a new update on where the public works crews are working on drainage improvements and maintenance. So I think as a whole, that's a real positive. We'll get this
I think
in the
people
hard
need to
copy
know and
out there.
see that they're working off of a master plan of sorts for the first time since 2004. So.
We'll do it.
So all said and told, next year stormwater is a little over $2.4 million in projects. Of these projects, we are looking as much as possible for state funding. Teresa Brooks is looking at various opportunities for us on how we could capitalize on state grants for all of our stormwater projects. As we get into our out year, if you look on the CIP, we're going under the guide that we might be able to receive a minimum of 50% state funding on all of these projects.
Mhm.
And that's just based on her historical, when she does a request of what she receives.
Okay.
Then we come to our the golf course. So the golf course is a parks facility. So even though it has its own fund, it is these requests are all funded by the general fund. So it would be a transfer from the general fund to the golf course fund, and these are all also necessary repairs based on the current conditions out there at the golf course, along with the fertilizer spreader, which is a capital item.
I can't help but feel slightly responsible for those bunker repairs.
Slightly?
Yeah, yes,
Slightly.
we're keeping tally, sir, of how much we should be sending you the bill
Yeah,
for.
direct to consumer.
Absolutely.
I think some of those are chases too.
So then we come to our capital outlay, which is the fleet replacement. All of the items that are seen on the next 2 pages that are part of the R&R program. So when we bought these vehicles or equipment years ago, we set an amortization schedule that we set the money aside annually for its eventual replacement. So all of these items on here are funded. I can tell you that we're still going through this list with the departments and with fleet, that if there's any opportunity to push it off based on condition of the vehicle, just because it's 7 years old doesn't necessarily mean it needs to be replaced. If the, if aesthetically it still looks good, mechanically it still runs, as it should. Even to the point that, your public works director and fleet manager, if a pickup truck just needs a new bed, that's $1,500 versus $40,000. So looking at any opportunity we can to potentially extend the life of the vehicle before it's replaced. The other thing too is, as we stated during last year's process, in some cases, like the ladder truck, that would be a case of, it's not fully funded. We might also actually have to do a debt issuance for that as part of the master lease that we established this past year. So again, it just depends on how much money is in the fund for that particular vehicle on the items greater than $100,000. Because obviously when we purchased those vehicles years ago, prices have escalated drastically since they originally went online. So altogether, we have requests across all funds for a fleet of $4.8 million. Just like last year, we do know that we will be able to extend some of these. So when we come to you in July, that final assessment will be made on all of these vehicles. Capital outlay, repair and replacement. Everything that you see here are existing items that the city has. The city hall does have an elevator already. However, it needs a major repair done to it that we estimate to be compliant with state requirements to be a little around $400,000. So, the resodding, the causeway pier lights, the fire alarms, the portable air compressors, etc., everything on this list has outlived its useful life or needs a major repair in the case of the city hall elevators. And these requests are $825,000. Then we go to our fleet new requests. These are vehicles that we do not currently have within our fleet. These would be new. So all of these would be outlay that's out of pocket 100%. What you see here out of the building fund, general fund, and stormwater funds. Okay. Also, capital outlay new, these are items that we don't have also that will need to be added for better efficiencies, level of service throughout all of the various departments of the city. The highlight of them is that on there in information technology, going through looking at everything within the IT department, looking at our disaster recovery cloud failover safety net, that it could be upwards of $700,000. We're still reviewing that to make sure that there's not a better alternative, working with consultants for other avenues to help reduce that cost.
On that one specifically,
Yes, sir.
I'd really like some feedback on what other municipalities in Volusia County are doing.
Absolutely, and I can tell you that we submitted stuff to them the other day that they're
Good.
helping to make sure that we're not only doing what we're saying we want to do, but what's also the industry standard.
From time to time, it just seems like, I guess maybe Wayne, for you, it just seems like from time to time over the years, we have gotten involved in some technology and spent some money to find out later that it really wasn't as what we thought it might be, and nobody around here uses it. And I'm very leery about reinventing the wheel if other areas around us are already doing something that works. I'd rather go with the tried and true. I don't want to always be on what Bob
The
Ford used
leading
to call
edge
the bleeding
versus
edge.
the bleeding edge,
Right.
sure.
We're trying
Completely
to
agree
be-
with you. That's the message we've been given is proven technology, not
Perfect.
unknown.
I like it.
Plus
It's okay to be
items
boring.
that are readily available nearby. You know, so we don't want long lead times. We want something that's industry
That
standard.
people know
so-
how to use, so we don't have
Correct.
to, we don't have to
Yeah.
pay somebody from
Yeah.
Silicon Valley to tell us how to use it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Then we get to our new positions. The city manager and I have met with all the department heads on these items. Again, these are in the preliminary stages. They're not final. We haven't come up with all the necessary funding for them. That will come to us, to you in the July workshop. I can tell you that for the community development items here, that's fully funded already if we move forward with them within the building fund. The water sewer request here for the forester and plant mechanic, those have also been incorporated into the Rafatillis rate study. So we're, if the fees are adopted, that would also be funded. As we look at the general fund, the 6 firefighters, the fire chief is reviewing those to make sure, that that is not only, a viable thing to do versus continuing to have overtime within the department, but looking at, well-being of the firefighters. For the police department, for the community service officer patrol, that would help to augment, when there's an accident, needs traffic control within the city, at school zones, or any other day-to-day items that might come up, that a CSO officer would help augment our sworn officers. And then on the police records clerk, there's new requirements coming down for not only public records requests, new technology that is just actually creating more public records requests that the existing staff cannot keep up, but also just the sheer fact that it boils down to public records requests. We can't keep up with the number of requests that we receive on a daily basis. But all of these
So I
items that
understand
are
there's
all,
also there's new crime data software coming in that it's a much more complex way of tracking crimes as opposed to like if somebody does 4 or 5 things, right now they track by the worst, and this new software will be every single incident will be reported. So it's a much more complex tracking requirement that helps us. So there's going to be a different and higher level requirement for records keeping as we move forward, as soon as that becomes available to us, which could be as early as this summer.
that's correct.
Stay on this page for a little while, because I'd like all 5 of us to be able to chime in on all of these. Some of these make perfect sense on the outset, but before we add positions, I want, or talk about adding positions, because that's all we're really doing tonight. I want to have some kind of comfort level with what we're talking about. Gentlemen, questions? Drew, do you have any right now?
Not at the moment, no.
Scott?
I don't really have, these make sense to me to look at least on their face value right now. Well, there's a lot of work to be done, but I guess the biggest question that comes to mind is, can you fill them? What I don't want to do is be creating positions and budgeting positions that we can't fill.
Yep.
Because we struggle to fill a lot of what we have now. We hear that constantly, it seems like. So
We are no different from anybody else in the
right,
labor
yeah,
market.
it would be I don't know, at least in my mind, it would seem like this would be for point of discussion easier if you weren't having that thing in the back of your mind that I can't fill positions that we already have. You know what I mean, citywide speaking.
I can sit here and say, I just did a
There's two
ride-along
challenges. Sure.
last Friday night, seeing what our officers do out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if the chief came asking for more positions, I can certainly see where he could justify it, but what you get, the point is, right now, we need to fill the ones we have, and we got a ways to go to do that. We swore 5 new officers in on Friday. It was great to see. And it's gonna be a while before they're up to speed. And this is a process. This is indeed a process. So you're right. That is a concern of mine, is, we don't wanna get the cart before the horse with those. Read your thoughts?
Yeah, Scott brings an excellent point with dealing with vacancies in the labor market across the board. I totally agree with that. I also know that at face value, these are on here because our department heads have sat down and asked themselves, are these critical needs? Are they things that the city actually needs, and how can they benefit our residents? So, I just want to get more information and more details on them as we go. But yeah, at face value, it's interesting. Of all the ones that kind of jumps off to me, the community service officer one gets me, because today I just happened to run into some of our VIPs having lunch. And that's kind of a result, I would imagine, of us having less and less of those volunteer police officers who have been such an asset to our force for so long. There's a lot of empty spaces there now, and so when you talk about community service, talk about like going out and managing school traffic, or traffic at a crash incident, something like that, something that a CSO could do. Those are things our VIPs have been covering for a very long time. And it makes you really appreciate the savings that has provided to the city for so many years by having such great participation in that program.
Yep.
And that's a weird one on there that jumps off the page, but knowing the why, just
Sure. Tracy?
And definitely, tailing on to what Reed said, definitely the CSOs help in the school zones, allowing motor officers to be in other locations. That's a wonderful thing. I have no issues with that one at all with me, if the positions can be filled. 6 firefighters, I know they've been short-staffed. This is what department heads are looking for. The question is like John said, is budgetary as far as overtime pay, the relationship between the overtime and what they're requesting versus filling the need. Is some like overtime, some don't like overtime. There's burnout in overtime also. So I know there's employees that need to be added to it. It's, where's that happy medium? Is 6 the right number? 3 the right number? Is it 9? That's where budget comes back and figuring out where the need actually needs to be. Is 6 the correct number?
And, well, I know Wayne and I had a conversation about that last night when I saw the number of 6, 560,925. That's about $94,000 per position, approximately, and that's total cost. That's not just their salary. That's
Correct.
benefits,
Benefits,
the equipment, the things that you need to do for all of that. The number 6 was kind of key because of staffing, and the one thing, and Tracy brings up a good point, is that we have a lot of mandatory overtime in the fire department that is not necessarily good long-term. And I'd like us to, when we talk about this number in the future, kind of have, before we add $500,000 in costs there that's going to be incurred in the general fund, I'd like to know what the expected offset is. And I know you're going to go on the conservative side of that, but if we're going to be able to save a sufficient amount of overtime, and you can't measure what we're going to save in avoided burnout, but we certainly would like to know, have some idea what the true cost of that's going to be, conservatively, of course. I hope that the actual number would always come in a little bit better, but I see $500,000 here. I also know that there's a net on the other side of that the true number is not going to be quite that high, and I think we need to be able to know what that is when we get into the budget workshop before we can really talk about it, because 6 firefighters, very important. I was kidding with you last night. I said, we're adding a 6th station? When did that get slipped into the budget? But for our mission, for what we're doing, I've got to have a better idea of what the true impact is.
On it, Mayor, I look at it, you see the number 6, we have 5 stations, and a rescue unit that runs their butt off 24/7, and so we're talking about 2 firefighters per shift.
Yep.
They're allowed to have 2 or 3 off on vacation every shift, and if one person calls out sick, I would imagine we're in I'm sure the chief can answer, but I would imagine we're in double-digit mandates weekly.
I'm sure that the
And-
number is,
and
and
we're-
we've talked about
We're
that
talking
for a
about
while.
time and a
yeah.
half times, 24 hours is 36 hours of pay every time they're mandated for a 24-hour shift. And a lot of guys are doing 48s. People are getting burned out, but we're talking about 2 per shift.
Well, I think you're hitting on exactly what I'm talking about. $562,000 for 6 new firefighters.
Yeah.
That's not what our actual cost is gonna be.
True.
When we factor that in.
Yeah,
and
you
whatever-
take away the overtime and the,
What is it actually gonna cost us at the
Yeah.
end of the day and at the same time, we'll gain those efficiencies and improvements in public service.
And
I need to have a better idea of what the actual cost is gonna
Yeah.
be, because I know it's not this.
With Drew bringing up transport, just out of curiosity, John, do you know off the top of your head, these firefighters, do we know if any of them will be paramedics? Does the number here reflect that includes for some of them to be paramedics or all?
Roughly half of our firefighters are paramedics, so
Right.
this is based off of 3 of them being paramedics.
Okay.
Okay.
I just
Yeah.
more information to know, obviously. But Don's got a great point. That number at first as a number is, $500,000, but what you save in overtime and morale and everything else is certainly something you want to get a feel for.
And we gotta have the full picture.
Absolutely.
And I am working with the fire chief to come up with all of these items that you've requested, and we'll report back at a later date.
I know he doesn't mind working late on those kinds of things. Thanks, Joe.
So our future assumptions, the preliminary information regarding our gross taxable value is just that. It's preliminary. The pre-preliminary numbers will be provided here in a couple of weeks by the Volusia County Property Appraiser. And then at that time, I will provide that to you, obviously. Everything that I've showed you here this evening is based off of 5% increase over the prior year. Until June comes, we really won't know what that number will be based on inflation and everything else the last 12 months. Prior to that, we've been going on a 6.8% average increase over the last 10 years. So this is actually a little bit of a decrease from last year. I believe I'm being a lot more conservative than when I stood before you a year ago.
Decrease and the increase.
Correct. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics provides the South Region information, which is what we use for a lot of the items within our contracts, et cetera. The most recent information available is from April. It shows a 5.5 increase over last year, the last 12 months. That is, good news for us. When I was here last year, we were well over 9% increase year over year. So, things have, calmed down a little bit over the last 12 months. That's a direct impact to our building costs, when we need to buy concrete for sidewalks, et cetera. So that is good news to report.
Is that, when you were talking about an increase of 5.5%? 5.5% of what? Talking
So
about-
last year, so if we go out and buy, a gallon of gas, carton of eggs, building supplies, this is all areas. So the costs this year versus last year have increased 5.5%.
Okay, so I wasn't sure whether you were talking about cost or labor, because I saw.
It's
this is
all of that.
All costs.
It's
okay.
all costs.
All of-
That's the
all of our
yes,
all of our type for government operation.
absolutely,
Okay.
so not as big as the previous year, but still a fairly significant number.
absolutely.
Gotcha.
And 0.5% higher than taxable value estimates.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. And then the citywide fees over the last few months, again, we've had Rafatillis stand before us explaining, fees that needed to be increased, whether it's, general fees, building fees, impact fees for parks, transportation, fire, police, whether it was our utilities, water, sewer, stormwater. All of those have been discussed by Rafatillis to us. The solid waste fee has already been approved by council, and that's all based also on a CPI factor. I'm working with our waste management company that will go into effect. It is our wish that we will be bringing these fees to you in the coming month for adoption of those proposed fees. And it's everything we've been discussing the last 6 months with Ruff and Tillis.
I think the reason there's a little gap from when we had the conversation is the impact fees were required to go in front of the planning commission because of where they are structured in the ordinances, and so they've already been in front of the planning commission, and they're coming forward with a recommendation of approval to you, and then John will put them all together and bring them forward to council for formal consideration. I don't know, is it July or the first meeting in August?
That's correct. And it'll be a single resolution. It will incorporate language in there regarding annual increases, et cetera, and how often we go back for review of those fees.
I don't need to say it again.
It's in there.
Max every 5 years. The impact fees are the ones that jump out at me the most, because there are a lot of towns and cities right now that did not experience growth for a long time. Ours have. We've been able to keep up for the most part. But there are a lot of towns and cities across the state of Florida. Whenever you raise impact fees, there's a cost to that. You have to do the study. You have to do the things that go into that. And if you haven't had need to keep up with impact fees, you don't want to incur costs to raise fees that you're not charging anybody. Now all of a sudden, a lot of these towns and cities across Florida need more in impact fees, and they're regulated by the state on how much they can go up. And they haven't changed their impact fees 10, 15, 20 years, and they will never be able to make growth pay for itself in those cities. We've done a pretty good job of keeping up. The adjustments that we're talking about here are not tremendously large, and I'm pleased with that. But one way or the other, impact fees are vital to making sure that growth has an ideally speaking, pay for itself. So of these that jump out right here, of course, I think we all know the importance of our stormwater fees after what we experienced last year. That was one where we did not keep up. We went over 20 years before we raised it a few years ago. And because it had been so long and it was such a large jump, we were timid about going as far as we needed to go. And we saw the impact of Ian between that and working off an older master plan for drainage, which I've got to give city staff credit and Public Works and engineering on what they've done to work up a long-term master plan for drainage. When we talk about drainage and we talk about impact fees, those are things that speak to the future. I hate talking about more dollars for anything, but let's face it, the cost of things don't go down the way we'd like them to. We need to make sure that when we do raise our fees that they're nominal and in tune with everything else that's going on in society and not out of whack. And that's why we need to keep up. Waiting for somebody on my council here to tell me, okay, Mayor, you've said enough, shut up. But you know,
Okay,
thanks, Drew.
since you asked.
I get on a roll sometimes.
And then we get to our salary and benefits. Currently, we're in negotiations with all of our 4 bargaining units. We'll be bringing in more info on that at a later date. Our health insurance renewals, our plan year is January 1st to December 31st. We meet quarterly with Brown & Brown and Florida Healthcare to go over our claims. At this time, we are estimating a 10% increase. But we won't have a closer number to share with y'all until probably September. And if y'all recall last year, we did reduce it right at the last minute. So that did have a positive impact our final millage rate. So we'll bring more information to you as that comes. In summary, this evening, the preliminary request includes CIP of just a little over 24.3 million. Capital outlay of 2.4 million, fleet 4.9 million, and personnel of $905,000. It shows your citywide fees will be implemented if approved by council between July 1st and October 1st, pending your adoption. And then salary and benefits are all to be determined. Again, the budget is a very fluid process. This is strictly the framework that we're sharing with y'all this evening of when we come back in July, when we have better information on what our taxable value is, what the state revenues are. That's when we will truly have a better understanding of what items on this presentation could be requested for funding. We'll continue to work with the department heads and staff to see as things might need to be added to the list, might come off the list. We will continue on this until, as y'all recall, we were adding things and removing things right up to the final hearing last year. So we will continue that as well this year. If there's any questions on any of these items, obviously the city manager and I will be available to anyone to answer the questions. And if you need more information, we'll get it to you as quickly as we can. With that, is there any further questions that I can answer for this evening?
Council? I'm looking this way. Everybody's nodding.
I'm gonna want to see some information on comparative analysis with regard to the healthcare benefits. How do we stack up with other cities in our region in terms of what benefits are we providing at what cost, and how does that break down per employee in the city? I think that's reasonable to see, because I want to see that are we driving a competitive market to us as well, you know, with healthcare, which I get is a huge, monstrous challenge, but I just want to see what that looks like. So.
Okay. Read anything else?
Make sure you get the next step slide.
Yeah, I do actually. I have one more small thing, because there was one more slide I think coming up about the next steps, and this is important. I need to let you guys know I won't be here July 11th for that one workshop. I've got previous travel already scheduled, but I'll be here for the 18th, obviously, the 29th, September 6th, and September 20th.
There is a lot that goes into the 11th, so if there's anything that you can do individually with staff in advance of that.
Absolutely. I've already spoken to Wayne, and my plan is to give him, you know, as much insight as I can one-on-one, and if there's anything absolutely important that I want to get in front of you guys, I'll even write something to have it read into the record.
Okay.
All right?
Very good. Trace?
We've already talked about fire as far as the comparison, so that's the major thing, is seeing what that actual number will shake out at.
Okay. And
Also,
that'll probably be among the biggest things that move the millage rate one way or another of all that was talked about today because of the funding source.
Mayor, and
Yeah.
looking at that, the max millage rate, July 18th, I won't be here for that one. We have a vacation we set up last year, so.
I'll be out of the country.
I'm returning July 19th.
Okay.
We're going to have to find some other dates on that, John.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we have 2 people out for that one for the max millage, that's not going to work.
3. I won't be in the country.
Oh, no, I'll be here for the 18th.
Oh,
but
okay.
But still, you 2 will be
Okay.
missing, I don't
Yeah,
think.
I'm gone from
Yeah.
the 12th and returning the 19th.
We will have our regular council meeting on the 18th, and I think we can slug through that, but as far as setting the max millage rate, if we can look at an alternative.
We can go the Tuesday after. This was just an attempt
25th.
to get you a little more
Okay.
time to, in case you modified it, but
Okay.
we can go, we'll work on that.
Well, I just want
And
to
that's
say,
the reason why we talk about all this now.
I just want to say, John, I really appreciate how easy this was to digest for it's $32.5 million, so it's not in that sense being easy, but the way it was presented, kudos to you and staff on this, because it's a lot to take in, and appreciate having it here in May so that we can figure out all of these things and plan for the next couple of months. So thank you to you and staff for the hard work.
Yep. So I would just say, just on all the dates, the last day, and I'd have to confirm it with the property appraiser, but last year it was August 2nd was the last date that we can meet to adopt the maximum millage.
We had preliminary at the beginning of the year, had July 25 set as a workshop. We had just moved it up to give us more time to submit it, but I'm pretty sure we can make that work. If the council members who are going to be out in July can send Robin the times you're out, just so we'll make sure we have them on the calendar. We don't
Absolutely.
put anything in those timeframes.
Any other questions? Would anyone here from the public care to speak to any of this evening? There being none? Nobody over there? All right.
Anybody here? Was there?
Nope, it's not something we normally do unless you want to speak to if you want to speak to us about another issue, that we're speaking strictly budget tonight, but if you want to talk to us afterwards, we're here too.
Okay, we didn't understand.
No, no
Oh,
problem.
it's okay.
We're not going anywhere.
Absolutely.
So we are at your beck and call as soon as I drop the gavel. Any other business come before us this evening? No? Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.